Well, how's it going, everybody? Good. Wow. We lucked out with this gorgeous, for those of you who aren't from Washington, I know most people here I think are from around the area of Woodruff Fort. Man, this is pretty. Columbia River is so pretty. I was thinking the last time that I was down here, I was doing a SWAT mission, and I think we were doing a marijuana grow house a couple of miles that way. And it was just the most ghetto event that I had done in a while. We didn't get shot at that time, but there was way too many kids living in this nasty mold house. So anyways, here at a much better reason to be here this week for me. So yeah, Vancouver, it's great. It's great. No. You know what? The guys on my SWAT team, they're always like, anytime we show up at a duplex or a fourplex, and I was like, you gonna buy this one? I was like, please, this is not nearly hood enough for me, okay? But my name is Mike Newton. I'm a police officer. That's my full-time job. I still have a job. Christian never lets me forget that. Neither does Cody. I still have a full-time job. I'm a police officer. I'm a single father. I have full custody of my son. I'm very busy. I don't have a lot of time. The little bit of time that I do have, I have spent trying to build a real estate portfolio. When I presented last year, I had 13 units. This year I have 27. Closed on a, thank you, appreciate that. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. And I remember that feeling. And then when you hear Christian and Caleb talk about what they're doing later, then you can remember how much I suck compared to them. So, but I'll take it now. So, and it is a little funny to be here, surrounded by somebody who I consider a mentor. Both these guys as mentors, Michael Zuber right here, and then Dion. These two guys have been influential in my journey, just unbelievably influential in my journey. I met Zuber after I bought my very first house hack, and he told me to focus on two things: networking and seller financing. So what I'm going to talk about today is virtual networking and creative financing, which of course seller financing is incorporated in. If you have any questions about those two subjects, probably ask him first and then ask me. He's a very smart guy and somebody who's mentored me a lot. So thank you, Olivia, for coming up with him. And we're very excited to have both you guys here. Now I got to talk about the uncomfortable, awkward part, which is when everybody asks me, well, where do you invest? And I have to say, well, not in Washington, not in the beautiful community like this. I invest in the 1993 murder capital of the country, a place where there's 3 times the national crime rate, 3 times the national poverty rate. And that would be Gary, Indiana. Known only because that's where Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5 came from. Most people go, what? Who would invest in Gary, Indiana? As you guys probably will after this, you'll Google real quick Gary, Indiana. You'll be like, absolutely not. This is insane. This is crazy. This place doesn't make sense. And I'll admit I did the exact same thing when somebody suggested that I consider investing in the Midwest. I was like, fair enough. I'm from North Dakota. Fair enough. I like the Midwest. And then they said Gary, Indiana. And I was like, I don't know anything about it. I Googled it and I was like, absolutely not. What? No. Who would put money here? Look at this place. It suffered from deindustrialization in the 70s when we shipped all of our jobs to Mexico and to China. It was a steel city founded by the U.S. Steel Corporation. And it's just dropped in population from 200,000 to 70,000 over the last 70 years. So if you follow Bigger Pockets, they have their metrics for what makes a good market, and it's population growth and it's a stable job economy, and it does not fall under the umbrella of any of the things that would be routinely considered a good market to invest in. And that's why I was so hesitant to invest there. But I got started because I had become friends with a fellow police officer who had retired, and he was investing in Virginia where he lived, and he had a few houses in Alabama. And Zuber had actually connected him with a local Gary guy who got him interested in investing in Gary. And so he and I became friends, this fellow police officer. We start chatting, and he's kind of needling at me like, you should consider investing in Gary. And I was like, absolutely not happening. Well, after a year of him not taking no for an answer, I finally decided to do a little bit of research. And the most important thing that I learned when it comes to investing at a distance is how important it is to have local trusted boots on the ground, somebody who has already done the work in that market for you. Nice. Dion's arms were going to go numb. There we go. The important thing that I found was, and this is something that a lot of people ask me because I market myself online on YouTube as the long distance real estate investing guy or the out of state investing guy. Because a lot of people like us live in a very expensive cost of living market. And we say, I don't want to spend $800,000 on a duplex, and there's houses in the Midwest for $80,000. Well, how do I make that work? And so the concern is, well, how do I not get taken advantage of in one of these other markets? And so by making friends with this gentleman, Mark, he introduced me to a lot of his network, his property manager, the turnkey provider that he was working with out there. And so I was able to kind of skip to the front of the line in terms of doing a lot of the legwork of learning a new market. I was able to just piggyback off someone else. And so what I learned was it's really important. Most people think, who's your most important person on your team when you're investing at a distance? They think maybe it's a property manager, maybe it's contractors, maybe it's a handyman, maybe it's a real estate agent. For me, it always came down to the trusted boots on the ground. If you want to be successful at something, you should probably copy the people who have already done it. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. You can just figure out what someone else is doing and then just piggyback on what they're doing. So that was what I learned there. But the two topics that I want to cover today, now that I'm done talking about myself and kind of what I do, virtual networking and creative finance. And they go hand in hand. Most people right now are struggling to fund deals with traditional financing. Is anybody out here trying to get deals funded and they just don't cash flow really well right now because rates suck, prices are really high, sellers want the price that they want, they're not going to come down, supply is really, really constrained, and so they can get those high prices because there's almost nothing else on the market. I mean, you look at any city, how many duplexes to fourplexes are out there? It's like 10 per city. For big cities, it'd be like 10. And you're sitting there trying to make sense of the numbers. And for the last 15 years or so, coming out of the Great Recession, we learned we should probably invest for cash flow because investing for appreciation comes with some serious risks. The only way that you survive a Great Recession is if you had cash flow to keep your payments going and to make it through. And so most people in BiggerPockets, the same thing. There's a lot of videos dedicated to teaching you how to run the numbers. We got the king of running the numbers right here. I'm sure he'll get to that later. How to run the numbers to make sure that you're profitable enough to withstand any type of storm. Well, the problem is when funding is tough and when prices are high and stuff doesn't cash flow, it's not a good return on your money anymore. And that's where you have to get creative. So I've done a couple of creative deals this year alone, a bunch last year. I've seller financed a number of different deals. I have what I am coining as the slow BRRRR strategy. I've reinvented the BRRRR strategy to make it work for me. And I'm going to share a couple of these examples. So most people know what seller financing is, right? Does anybody not know what seller financing is? I can probably skip going over that. Okay, good. Seller financing, the holy grail of real estate investing, make the terms up. We all get it. But how do you find it? How do you sell them on it? That's what's really tricky. That is what is really tough, because if we could just go to an MLS that was exclusively seller finance deals, we would all do that. We'd be happy. But unfortunately, the difficult thing is most deals out there don't have the opportunity for seller financing. Most people don't have 100% equity in the property, or most of the sellers aren't educated enough about the process. Or even if they are educated enough about the process, they don't want to do seller financing because they just want their check up front. They want all their money. And so we're trying to do the smart thing of make offers that work for us, which is what you should do. You shouldn't lower your standards. But it's very, very difficult because you can't get anybody to come to the table and negotiate and bargain. And so this is why I say it goes hand in hand with the networking, the virtual networking, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Everything in life is about who you know. You need to know as many people as you can. The more people that you know, the more opportunities you're going to have to get deals that come to you. And so again, I'm so glad that he's here. Focus on two things, Mike, is what he told me. Networking and creative financing. So let me go ahead and share an example of a deal that I did. So I negotiated a duplex, and it was first. I got a $3,000 down, 0% interest on the payments. Just pay straight out of pocket for 3 years, and the balloon is due at 3 years. Now, because this is in Indiana, the price is extremely cheap. It's only a $25,000 property to start with. Now, when it's done being remodeled, and it actually is done being remodeled now. It got appraised at $160,000. So I put $20,000 into it. I paid $25,000, so I was all in at $45,000. It appraised for $160,000. Right, pretty good deal, pretty good numbers. But how did I find it? Well, I found it from a wholesaler. How did I meet the wholesaler? Well, I met the wholesaler because he took another one of our mutual friends, Matt, the lumberjack landlord. This wholesaler took Matt's real estate course, and I was a guest speaker at that course. And I happened to have a conversation with this wholesaler, and it just tracks back levels upon levels. I tell people all the time, you really should not underestimate the importance or the significance of any one relationship. There's like nobody that is too small or meaningless to talk to. Because when I thought I was just having a conversation with some student of this guy's YouTube course, what ended up happening was I made a connection. I've now bought 2 properties from this guy. One seller financed, the other one I just negotiated to such a ridiculously low cash offer that I've been able to make a ton of money with these 2 properties. Okay, I'm throwing a lot of information at you. The numbers on that duplex worked really, really well. It cash flows really, really well. I own this thing outright. The next thing that I did to make this creatively financed was I put $45,000 into this. It's worth $160,000. Now I could go to a bank, and I could go to the bank and I could say, give me 75% loan to value on this property, and they'll write me a check for like probably $120,000, and I get all my money back times 3, and I'm really happy. But I have a big payment, and I've got a kind of crappy interest rate. And so what I decided to do was the BRRRR strategy. But what I don't like about the BRRRR strategy is that it's very time heavy. If you borrow money to do the BRRRR strategy, you're looking to cash out as quickly as you can to pay back all of your original investment and your original money. And what ends up happening is what happened to me with my first ever BRRRR, which happened in 2022. When I decided to try the BRRRR strategy in March of 22 when interest rates were at 3%. And 6 months later when I'm trying to cash out, interest rates are now at 7%. It's the fastest that interest rates have ever increased in the history of the country as rates have gone up. They increased faster during that 6-month time frame than at any other point. So a lot of my cash flow got eaten up because now my payment's way higher than I thought. So I was sitting there saying, okay, how is it that I can do the BRRRR strategy and not get taken advantage of by the fact that if I get stuck at refinancing at the wrong time, that doesn't help me out? And I'd noticed by going to my local real estate meetups, meeting with groups of people like you guys, that there's a lot of people in these groups who want to invest, and they come and they come and they come, and they look at properties, but they never buy anything. They just can't, I don't know what, analysis paralysis, they're too afraid, they've got money, they want to invest, and I've done everything that I could to help these people invest, but they just couldn't get themselves over the edge. And what ended up happening was something I totally didn't expect. A lot of these people started saying, Mike, we've been following your journey about investing at a distance. Can we just invest with you? Could we partner on a deal? Could we lend money to you? So then I started to think, well, how can I do a deal that makes sense for me and makes sense for them? And so on accident, I discovered how to make great connections for private money lenders just by going to local meetups. People just kind of start to offer you money if you just don't ask for it and instead try to help them out. Funny how that worked out. And a lot of people actually just bought something too, which was great because then they got their dreams accomplished. So then I'm sitting there with this fully paid off asset, and I'm looking at my refinance options, and I'm not pulling the trigger on the refinance options because I just don't like the payment. I just don't like the interest rate. But I know I have somebody who wants to partner with me on the deal, and they want to give me $60,000. And so I'm sitting there trying to do the equation in my head, and what I came up with is what I call the slow BRRRR strategy. So now that I've got this fully paid off asset, and actually I had enacted this strategy before it had even been remodeled. So I had bought the property, just bought the property, and I knew what it was going to be worth. And I knew that I had private money lenders who wanted to lend money to me. And so what I did is I said, tell you what, I own this property. Why don't we take your $60,000 that you want to lend me, and you and I do a private mortgage with a promissory note, and we'll use this paid off property as the collateral for that debt. So now I go and file my private mortgage with them against the house. It's an official lien on the house. If I was to not pay them, they can go file a foreclosure on me. And how I made it beneficial for them was I pay them 10%, but I pay them interest only. So the interest only payment of 10% is cheaper than a principal and interest payment at 7.5%. So what happens for me is I actually am paying out less each month to my private money lender than I would be to a bank. So the property cash flows really well. Cash flows better than it would with a bank, which is what I'm concerned about on a month-to-month basis. Now you might come to the conclusion that I'm not paying anybody back. What happens when it's time to pay them all of their money back? So what I did was I set up a 5-year term. At 5 years, I owe them their original $60,000 back. And so my goal is that at the 5-year mark, I do a cash out refinance at that point, and when I get my cash back at the cash out refi, I pay them back in a lump sum. But what if we have the same problem 5 years from now that we're having right now and rates still suck, or it's just a bad time for me to do my cash out refi? Okay, so what I did is I said, all right, Let's say the market takes a dip, it doesn't appraise for what I thought, I can't get as much money back as I want, so I throw in a couple clauses that say, if it does not appraise for a minimum of $140,000, I get to extend up to an additional 3 years. No problem. Now I get 3 more years of time to find an opportunity to do the cash out refi section. And then you might ask yourself, well, what if a year from now, rates drop because the economy crashes and you want to do your cash out refi in 1 year, but you're locked in for 5 years? I said, no problem. I put in a clause that said there's no prepayment penalty. And they have no problem with that because they get their money back. And I paid them the interest the whole time. And I was straight up with them. If you like this, I'll just go find another property to do it again. You can reinvest your money right away. So I was able to give myself the opportunity to do a cash out refi at any time between now and the next 8 years. So I can cash flow really, really well for an 8-year time frame. And at any point, if it's advantageous to do a cash out refi, I can pull the trigger and make it happen, pay them their money back. They're happy. I'm happy. And now they're addicted to getting a passive income check from me. And guess what they're going to want to do next? Do it again. And so this was one creative finance strategy that I came up with that I've now done 3 times on a few different properties. And it works really, really well. You don't have to do it for just 50,000 or 60,000. You can do it for a larger amount. It just depends on the property. It depends on the cash flow it generates. But the numbers that was working well for me was 50 to 60. And it seems like there's a lot of people that attend these types of real estate meetups who have around that type of money to invest. They want to get their first rental property. And like I said earlier, for whatever reason, they just aren't able to pull the trigger. So the reason I tell this story and I give you these numbers specifically is because I want you to think in terms of like what Caleb does, like what Christian does. There is no limit to how creative you can be with the money. People have money that they want to lend. And the main takeaways are, if you're just trying to help them and you're not asking for their money, a lot of times that goes a long way and people just want to lend you money. They just start to like you. And when I talk, let me tie it back into the networking part, and more specifically the virtual networking part. So it's very important to get into rooms like this with people who want to invest. The lady who I just signed, I literally just closed on a $50,000 private money deal this week. I've been talking to this lady for 2 years. She's an avid subscriber of all of our YouTube channels. Her name's Michelle Meyer. For the first year and a half I knew her, all we tried to do was to help her buy real estate. And she even did complete a 1031 exchange within the last few months, but she had all this leftover money and all this other money in a savings account making her 2-3%. And she knows that I'll pay her 10. She just couldn't say no any longer. And I wasn't me asking. It was just her talking herself into doing private money because she got tired of looking for more real estate. So why it's important to network is because if you're not in these rooms and if you're not sharing your story, people will never even know that you're a potential option. And I don't think there's anything wrong with specifically asking for money and raising money and things like that. I've just never had the need to do that. A lot of people say, well, how do I find private money? And I have a lot of people message me on YouTube or on Instagram. Mike, how do I find a private money lender? The answer is you don't look for one. The answer is that you share your story and they kind of come to you. So I'll talk a little bit about virtual networking and then hopefully we can take some questions or have a discussion. I made a YouTube channel in 2017 because I had been watching, like you, Graham Stephan and Meet Kevin and some of these other bigger YouTube names, Grant Cardone, I'd been watching since like 2010. And I would always sit there and think to myself, is the way these guys are saying they did it actually what they did? Or are we getting the sugar-coated, Hollywood, jazzed-up version? And maybe they're skipping over all of the rough parts and they're just telling us the good stuff. So I was very skeptical of all the videos I was watching online. And so I decided, as a newly divorced single guy renting a small unit with like less than $1,000 in my bank account. I'd been poor and broke pretty much my whole life. I'd just gotten out of the academy as an officer, brand new officer, not much money, working a crappy shift. I was like, I'm going to figure out how to become financially free with real estate. But I'm also going to document the entire process. So I make this YouTube video and it's me renting, no money. And I'm like, I'm going to become financially free with real estate. And I'm going to actually share the truth about it, how long it takes, what the actual journey looks like. And I'm going to give you the good, bad, and the ugly. And so I've made videos on this channel all the way from 2017 to today, documenting every property I've purchased, every meeting I've ever been to, every convention I've ever spoken at. And I've spoken for Christian multiple times. I spoke here last year for Zuber a number of times. The entire process from start to finish, all of the networking, our first interview in grainy 480p, terrible sound quality, like awful, terrible. And look how far we've come. Now I've got my own private camera crew over here. Just kidding, buddy. It's amazing to watch how much will change if you just meet the right people. How did I meet Dion? Because of Zuber. He happened to be friends with 2 cops that invest in real estate that got divorced, but also got custody. Like, what are the odds of that, man? You ever think about that one? Small world. Good for us. The opportunities that come from networking with people are amazing. And I'm sure most of you guys know that. But what I want to encourage you to do is the virtual networking. If you don't have Instagram or you're not using Instagram, you should be. And I know it seems lame because we're not teenage girls taking selfies. And I know it seems dumb to have a YouTube channel because, well, what am I going to talk about? I promise you it's worth every penny. I did not expect the influx of potential opportunities that I have gotten as they have come. First of all, I don't have a huge YouTube channel. I now today have 9,000 subscribers. That's pretty small. For reference, like 60,000 right here. And same thing for you over there. My channel is not particularly large. Most of that growth has happened in the last 2 years. The purpose of creating a YouTube and an Instagram page where you invest is not so that you can get 60,000 or 100,000 subscribers or make money off of YouTube. If you go on Google right now and you type in, or if you go on YouTube and you type in how to get started investing in real estate, you guys could scroll through 100 pages of videos. You'll never find a video from me. I promise you, 100 pages, you'll never see a video from me. But if you type in how to invest in Gary, Indiana real estate, the first 100 videos are all me. And so what I try to tell people to do, what I try to encourage them to do is don't look at social media as I want to get famous and I want to have all. No, what you want to do is you want to be the go-to local expert in your city or your county or even your state. How to get started investing in real estate, Grand Forks, North Dakota. How to do a house hack in Boulder, Colorado. You make one video a month for 12 months with a title of your city and state and whatever topic you're talking about. 12 months from now, you have 12 videos. You own every single search term that the algorithm has around your city, your county, your state. And anybody in that area that looks up anything online, which remember, the second biggest search engine on the planet is YouTube, also owned by Google. So the engine optimization there is very related. If they search on Google, they'll still find your YouTube stuff. Everybody who's Googling real estate deals or information in your market is now stuck looking at one person, you. And that's how I have deals that come to me. Like another one I'll tell you about. I have this guy who follows me on Instagram. No profile picture. English is clearly his second language. Messages me all the time. We talk for 6 months, just chatting back and forth. One day he's like, hey man, did you see this deal on this random Facebook page that he's a group of? And I said, no, I didn't. He sends it to me. It's a $29,000 house that I bought and remodeled for another 20 grand. So I was all in at 50 and it appraised for 140. Took me like a month to do the repairs. So I make $80,000 or $90,000 in a 1 month period. I had to wait 6 months to do the cash out refi. Just because I happened to chat with this guy who I finally did meet him 2 years later. But for the first 2 years, I knew him. I didn't even know what he looked like, man. I have no idea. And there's nothing on his profile, nothing. But I just took the time to talk to somebody who also lived in Indiana and had found me through Googling Indiana real estate, made friends with me, and me with my little 2,000 followers on Instagram. And half of those are people I just know from being a regular person. Like, I'm not an influencer, but you can be extremely dangerous in your local market if you take the time to document what you're doing. So the purpose of the virtual networking is to document your journey, because as people watch what you've done, they're probably going to want to either partake in that, get advice from you, or connect with you. 2, you never know where the deals are going to come from. They could just come from a random subscriber that you just happen to chat with. 3, it's really cool to just look back and see how far you've come. Because I remember making my first video, and then the first video of when I bought my first house hack. And now I've got 27 different rental units, and I've got like 13 different buildings, and I do these complex creative financing strategies. And I used to think that it was complex to just 5% down owner occupied. Like, you watch that journey and you see how much things have changed. And then you get to turn around and you get to help other people, which is why I'm actually here today, because he helped me. I'm trying to help others. And that's a little bit about me and what I'm doing. So does anybody have any questions about anything I said? Yes.
So I love what you said. I 100% agree. I get a lot of calls from wholesalers, and I feel like they watch 2 YouTube videos and they're like, "What's your buy box?" I need to be nicer to them, because I hear what you're saying. But
Right.
I'm curious. Do you think there's value in kind of like
Top.
training them? So I get a little
Oh yeah.
salty with them and like a good deal, pencils, right? And
Right. Right. So they call and they want to know what you're looking to buy.
yeah, and clearly they're very inexperienced. They've never done a deal. They watch a few YouTube videos. I tend to kind of just write them off, and I get annoyed by it because I'm like, don't waste my time, right? But I know that's the wrong strategy.
Yeah, so that's actually a really good question. It's funny. A lot of people message me because I say now so many of my deals come from off market, come from wholesalers. In fact, if you want to, here's a secret little hack. You want to get more seller financing opportunities? Teach those wholesalers what seller financing is. I had a wholesaler negotiate an entire seller finance deal for me. What are wholesalers doing? They're spending a lot of money to call 1,000 people in a month and give them the most ridiculous, outlandish offers on the planet. Yeah, we'll pay 20 cents on the dollar for that house. Yeah. Well, what if instead of paying 50 cents on the dollar, they could also, after getting rejected, offer, well, we could do 100 cents on the dollar if you finance it at 0% interest and take a 5% down payment from this investor over here. Or maybe we'll just pay 80 cents on the dollar and you get some great terms. I taught a wholesaler about seller financing, and then he went out and negotiated it for me, and I closed on the deal. No relationship is too small, as annoying as they are, and they are annoying. And mostly what's annoying about these guys is a lot of times because of how uneducated they are, this thing is not a deal. This is overpriced, it's under repaired, it's straight garbage, and you want me to pay retail. Like, bro, you're supposed to be good at this, and they're not. And that's it is their fault, but you also have to remember who wholesaling targets specifically. Wholesaling is pitched as you have no money and you've probably made bad choices in life. Hey, you can get really rich really quick with real estate if you just find a deal and sell it to an investor. Like, oh, wow, that sounds too good to be true. It almost is. Not quite, but it almost is. But yes, if you want to find more wholesalers, you should be trying to find more wholesalers.
I mean, I don't have a problem getting leads, but they call me, and I feel like there's an opportunity that you just reframe for me. So
right. Yeah. Yeah, agreed. And you know what's even easier too? You make one YouTube video about your buy box, and you make one YouTube video about the way you structured seller financing, and boom, here's 2 links to my YouTube video you can watch. You don't even have to have the conversation anymore. And then at the end of those YouTube videos, you have a thing in there that says, okay, now if you actually made it to the end of this video, you're allowed to call me back and give me the passphrase that I'll now have a real conversation with you. And then you filter out your calls that way. Yeah, smart. I want to see you be successful. Anybody else? Any other questions? Yeah, what's up, man?
I like some of the things you mentioned about the seller carry and notes, and I love this area of it because of how you can structure their stuff.
Right.
So beyond the clause that you had that if you're not able to refi because it doesn't get appraised, what other clauses have you put in your notes that have helped you throughout multiple seller carries that you've noticed that by calling at this time to benefit you, but also at the same time the seller being okay with the clause?
Right. Yeah, so that's a good question. I really don't have too many stipulations in there because, in all truthfulness, when I buy these properties, right, I buy them for so cheap and I can get my remodel done. The spread that I have on my after repair value is oftentimes 3 times what I'm actually putting into it. It would be so hard for me to take a loss in terms of the refinance and not working out where I made money or something like that. I'm not super concerned. If I have 8 years to pick the time to do the refinance, there's not a lot that I'm worried about. Now, sometimes they have more concerns, like, okay, well, what if I don't make the payment? Well, here's the late payment structure. Okay, well, what if you default and I'm concerned? A piece of advice, again, that I got from the master over here, you can pre-sign a quit claim deed and have that on file if it's an additional piece of security in their brain. Okay, I know that if he doesn't pay, this works for seller financing too. I know that if he doesn't pay, instead of going through a foreclosure, the lawyer and I have on file a pre-signed quit claim deed, and we can just file that on the spot. Like just a little extra piece of security that will put them at rest. I'm not trying to rip you off. But I have not really put in any additional clauses other than no prepayment penalty, and I can extend up to 3 years because it's just so simple. I pay them their 10%. And the way that it is, 10% on 50,000 is $5,000 a year. I divide it into monthly payments so that they actually get a monthly check and they feel like it's a real investment to them. and they get addicted to the cash flow, and I pay them 3 or 4 days early, and I send them a Facebook message that says, your number one investor just paid you early again, you're welcome. And I tease them like that. I do every single person, because they just, oh, that's so funny. That's it. Because guess what happens when our note expires and they don't get that payment, they don't get that little love letter message from me, they're going to miss me. They're going to want to invest again. And manipulating people is something you learn to be really good at as a cop. And so I just take that skill and transfer, right? Just kidding. It's called talking people into handcuffs without a use of force. It's a de-escalation tactic. That's all it is. But I hope that answered the question, man. Yeah, I mean, there's probably a bunch of different minor things that I could put in there. And I had a conversation with a real estate attorney for the state of Indiana. And I asked him if I had any openings or anything like that, if there's anything I should add. And he didn't say that he had any major concerns about it. So I don't think there's any way someone's going to attack the contract. And I haven't had a problem yet, because guess what? I pay on time. What do they have to complain about?